Windsor Castle, an official residence of our sovereign and the largest occupied castle in the world. A royal home and fortress encapsulating nearly 1,000 years of British history. The castle, founded by William the Conqueror, remains an integral working palace today. Often used by the Queen to host state visits from overseas foreign heads of state, monarchs and presidents enter the castle in horse-drawn carriages through the George IV gateway into the quadrangle in the Upper Ward. And for only a few days a year, it provides a similar welcome when the gates are open to recipients and their guests to receive their honour at the investiture ceremony. Windsor Castle is a hugely popular visitor attraction, with several thousands of people exploring each day the many parts of the castle which are open to the public, including the precincts, the state apartments, Queen Mary's Doll's House, St George's Chapel and the Albert Memorial Chapel. But very few get this special invitation. The administrative process behind these invitations is conducted at the Central Chancery of the Orders of Knighthood at St James's Palace. It is part of the Lord Chamberlain's office and is responsible for governing the orders of chivalry and maintaining the records of all appointments, promotions and deaths within each order. They also take the lead in organising investitures and the sending out of invitations, together with warrants signed by the Queen.
How many have we got then for tomorrow, Rachel?
We were 95 people coming today, but I'm afraid we've lost one. Mr Mason has gone into hospital, and so we're down to 94.
94. And how many guests now, do you think?
It's 279 guests.
279.
One gentleman is apparently slightly deaf, but I think he wears a hearing aid.
He's got a hearing aid, and there's no need for a sign language interpreter, is there?
No, not this time.
Yeah.
No.
Well, I think that's it. I think we've covered all the points now.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Following the compilation of the New Year and the Queen's birthday honours lists, the details of the awards are first checked against records held by the Central Chancery before being sent for publication in the London Gazette. When the various insignia arrive from the manufacturers, each decoration is very carefully scrutinised for blemishes and then stored in the Central Chancery's vaults to await its recipient. At 8 o'clock in the morning, the Berkshire town of Windsor is already alive to another working day, and for the select 100 or so men and women who are anxiously making their way to the castle, it's the culmination of many weeks of preparation. It's the day of their investiture at Windsor Castle. Preparations at the castle are well underway. Everything in the staterooms, including the Waterloo Chamber, scene of many state and official occasions, and where today's investiture will take place, are given detailed and careful attention. As the gates of Windsor Castle are open to the recipients and their guests, up in the Waterloo Chamber, final checks are being made by the Secretary of the Central Chancery of the Orders of Knighthood, Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Matheson. Adjoining the Waterloo Chamber, and where today's recipients will proceed before entering the chamber to collect their award, is the Garter Throne Room, Queen Victoria's principal throne room, where she received important visitors while seated on an impressive ivory throne. Today, in its place, rests a giltwood throne chair made for the coronation in 1953. Adjacent to the Waterloo Chamber, and where recipients will exit having received their award, is the immense and magnificent St George's Hall, created by Sir Geoffrey Wyatville for George IV. And despite the fire of 1992, which destroyed the ceiling, as well as damaging many other staterooms, the evidence of such a catastrophe is negligible due to the incredible repair and restoration effort by so many skilled craftsmen and women. Now carefully restored, the hall boasts a new roof constructed entirely of green oak using medieval carpentry methods. Coats of arms of the Knights of the Garter adorn the ceilings, and their names are inscribed on panels around the walls. The hall, which measures 56 metres long and 9 metres wide, is also used for state banquets, held at the beginning of a state visit, with guests dining at a table seating up to 162 people. The rooms built for King Charles II and his wife Catherine of Braganza forms an impressive sequence of Baroque state apartments. They include the King's Drawing Room, where George IV's body lay in state in 1830, the King's Bedchamber, where Charles II reportedly met advisers to discuss affairs of the state, the Queen's Drawing Room, and also the King's Dining Room, which lies between the King's and Queen's apartments. Only a select number of investitures are held at Windsor Castle each year, and recipients and their guests are treated to a sumptuous display of art and indeed history as they carefully make their way through this majestic building. For most of those receiving an honour, this is probably the first and only time in their lives they will be received by the Queen in the Waterloo Chamber at Windsor Castle. The honours system and the concept of the investitures as we know it today is relatively new, given that the history of the monarchy spans over 1,000 years. Honours for chivalry have been around for centuries, but it was largely due to the Queen's grandfather George V, who in 1917 established the Order of the British Empire so that honours could be more widely given to deserving citizens from all walks of life, men and women, for their contribution to the war effort. With the ending of the First World War and the armistice in 1918, the King extended the range of recipients to include those from the world of science, the arts and literature, as well as the voluntary and charitable sectors. The investiture is a very special occasion, and each recipient will take away an impression of magnificent sights and sounds that will be long remembered and talked about. There is no doubt that investitures are stage-managed with military precision. Each recipient must be in the right place at the right time, be briefed as to what to expect when reaching the dais, and what to do once the honour has been presented. The timing is well rehearsed and must be accurate for it all to begin at 11 o'clock. The Queen's Drawing Room, one of about 1,000 rooms in the castle, is just one of the many state rooms frequently used for receptions. During the 19th century, this room, then called the Picture Gallery, was densely hung with old masters. Today, some of the finest Tudor and Stuart royal portraits in the royal collection are hung here. While the room is readied and the props are set, there is time for new knights to get acquainted.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Can I ask you to stand over there with your back to the fireplace?
Their briefing is carried out by the Comptroller of the Lord Chamberlain's office, Lieutenant Colonel Sir Andrew Ford.
The investiture will start at 11 o'clock this morning, and it takes place in the Waterloo Chamber, which is the other side of the castle. And I think the best thing I can do is to walk myself through the procedure that you'll be going through and take any questions should you so have them afterwards. And I'm going to start that by standing in that window space over there, which will represent a door that you'll find yourself standing in at the head of a queue, looking into the Waterloo Chamber. And from there, I shall set the scene. Okay, so what happens? As you stand here in this doorway, directly on your left, Charlotte Martin of the Lord Chamberlain's office will be ticking your name off to make sure the right person going forward to receive the right award. Charlotte sets you off, walking, nice normal walking pace, please. Up alongside Gordon here, wait. Surname is called, forward you go. Turn, face the Queen. Dip of the head, curtsy. and then forward you go. Now for you two gentlemen, the stool will be in the way because you're to be knighted, of course. Left foot up against the edge of the stool here, take the handle in your right hand, nice resting motion on your right knee, keeping your head erect, and the Queen will place firstly on your right shoulder, then your left shoulder the sword. Touch, touch, stand up. There are no words said. There's no arise to hero or anything like that, I'm afraid. So just touch, touch, and get up. She won't invite you to get up, so just do it yourself, please, and move to the left of the stool. For everybody else here, the stool will not be here, and you simply come forward after your neck bow or curtsy until your toes are up against the edge of the dais upon which she is standing. Receive your awards. Conversation, conversation, handshake, reverse. Please remember just to go back 2 or 3 paces. Give yourself some distance between yourself and the Queen. Dip of the head again, curtsy, right turn.
George IV was a great lover of art and fine decoration, and much of Windsor Castle's present appearance is due to the alterations he instigated in the 1820s with his architect Sir Geoffrey Wyatville. The buildings were refashioned in the Gothic style, with the addition of crenulations, turrets and towers. One of George IV's most remarkable additions was the Waterloo Chamber, which was created to show portraits commissioned from Sir Thomas Lawrence to commemorate the defeat of Napoleon at the Battle of Waterloo in 1815. They represent the monarchs, soldiers and statesmen who were involved in that defeat and its aftermath. They include George III, George IV, and the future William IV, the Duke of Wellington, Field Marshal von Blücher, the Emperors of Austria and Russia, the Kings of Prussia and France, and Pope Pius VII.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. You will probably have read in the blue booklet what goes on during the investiture, but I thought it might be of interest if I were to describe it again now that you are in the Waterloo Chamber. About 27 investitures are held each year, and on some occasions the Queen is represented by the Prince of Wales or the Princess Royal. Usually 22 of these investitures are held at Buckingham Palace, 4 at Windsor, and 1 at the Palace of Holyrood House in Edinburgh. Shortly after I have finished speaking, 5 yeomen of the Queen's bodyguard of the Yeomen of the Guard will enter the Waterloo Chamber and take up their positions on and beside the dais. The Yeomen of the Guard are the oldest royal bodyguard in the world, having been founded in 1485 in the reign of King Henry VII, over 525 years ago. At 11 o'clock, the Queen and her party will enter the Waterloo Chamber by the door on my left, escorted by 2 Gurkha orderly officers, a custom instituted in the reign of Queen Victoria in 1876. Please stand when Her Majesty enters the chamber. A string orchestra from the Royal Artillery, under the direction of Captain Craig Hallett, will play the national anthem. Please remain standing until Her Majesty bids you be seated. The investiture then begins. Viscount Brookborough, Lord-in-Waiting, announces the name of each recipient, who will enter through the door on my right. After being invested, the recipients will leave through the door on my left and then re-enter the chamber at the rear of the room and sit in the empty chairs. At the end of the ceremony, the Lord-in-Waiting will come forward and stand in front of Her Majesty. This is the signal for everyone to stand while the orchestra plays the national anthem once again. After Her Majesty has withdrawn, your friends and relations who have been decorated will meet you at the rear of the chamber. Today there are 82, ladies and gentlemen, for investiture, and the ceremony will probably take about 55 minutes. Thank you very much.
The Queen's Ballroom, where most of today's recipients gather, remained the principal ballroom in the castle until the completion of the Grand Reception Room and the Waterloo Chamber in the 1830s. On display here is the intriguing Hunting Negress's clock, purchased by George IV, which by pulling the right earring displays the time in the eye sockets. The magnificent glass chandeliers, which fall gracefully from the ceiling, were hung during the reign of Queen Victoria, as were the portraits by Anthony van Dyck, an arrangement that continues to this day.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning.
Lieutenant Colonel Sir Andrew Ford calms any apprehension and nerves with good humour and advice.
The investiture, ladies and gentlemen, will start at 11 o'clock this morning, and it will take place in the Waterloo Chamber, which is the other side of the castle. The Queen is taking it today. I think the best thing I can do is to walk myself through the procedure that you'll be going through, and I'm going to start that by standing over there, which I hope you can imagine that kind of just represents a doorway looking into the Waterloo Chamber, and from there I shall set the scene. Right, just want to imagine you're the head of a queue now, standing in a door frame, looking into a much, much, much larger room than we're currently standing in. And on your right, as you look into this room, will be some 250 or so of your guests seated, looking in the direction that I'm pointing to at the moment. High right above them is an orchestra playing music from a gallery. Roughly where the bulk of you are standing in front of the fireplace there is a low dais, about 6 inches high, 20 feet broad, centred upon which will be the Queen this morning. Members of her household around her, central amongst them will be the Viscount Brookborough, who will be making announcements over a public address system as to who you are, why you're here and what award you're about to receive. Opposite you and beyond the platform will be another set of doors which will represent your exit route. And in this case, just for the sake of argument, will be those doors that I'm pointing to at the moment. So the flow of activity, if you will, for you as an individual is from this doorway, via the platform, and you're exiting in that direction. 3 people central to your lives as you stand in this doorway here, and clearly not here at the moment, but Charlotte Martin, who will prompt you to move forward at the appropriate moment. And moving forward towards Lieutenant Colonel Gordon Birdwood here, gentleman usher to the Queen, who's your last safe port of call, all right? And I say that because, just to recall, no initiative whatsoever in any of what I've described until you reach Gordon, and then just a little bit of free thinking beyond that. And beyond him, Air Commodore Malcolm Fuller, also gentleman usher to the Queen, who's marking those exit routes, the exit route out of the room. Okay, that's the scene set, I hope, and I'll just walk myself through the procedure now that you'll be going through. Charlotte will set you off at the appropriate moment. You'll go forward in a dogleg to end up in front of Gordon here. And when you get here, I will ask you to wait, please, when you reach him, your shoulder against his chest, exactly in the manner that I'm standing in relation to him at the moment. And you're waiting, ladies and gentlemen, to hear your surname. All right? There are lots of words about you beforehand, lots of words about you afterwards, but it's your surname that's the trigger for you to move forward. If you miss that for some odd reason, you're going to get a sharp reminder, all right, from him. So standing here, surname is called, forward you go. And you, to the point that you are centred upon the Queen, turn and face her. She's about 8 feet in front of you on that platform that I touched on earlier. And when you get here, please, the gentleman, literally a neck bow. Place your chin on your chest. That's all that's required, chin on chest. And for the ladies, I'll give myself a little bit more room here, a little bit of a curtsy, please, as best you can, and probably better than I've just done. And then forward you go after you've done that. It'll be 2 or 3 paces, to the point that your toes are up against the edge of the dais upon which she is standing. Do not climb onto the dais, please. We've seen it all before, I can tell you. So toes to the edge of the dais, and I see now you've all got hooks on your lapels, and onto those hooks she will place a brooch in the case of the ladies, and in the case of the gentleman here, a medal. And during the course of that giving, there's a 2-way conversation between yourself and the monarch. It comes to an end when she offers you her hand. Take it, shake it, go back 2 or 3 paces, just give yourself a little bit of distance between yourself and Her Majesty, and then a dip of the head again from the gentleman and a curtsy from the ladies. And then right turn after you've done that. Turn to the right, past Malcolm here, and you're going out through the exit doors that will be perfectly obvious to you ahead of you. Okay, that's the flow of activity within this room. When you go out of that room, you'll meet members of staff again who'll take the awards back off you, box them up, give them back to you, and usher you back into the rear of the Waterloo Chamber, where we'll give you a seat to witness the balance of proceedings. Ladies will take your handbags off you before you go through this procedure, and probably depending on the quality of your curtsy, you'll get them back afterwards. How do we address the Queen? Your Majesty to start with, ma'am as the conversation develops. Your Majesty, ma'am. Right, that's all I've got to say. Has anyone got any questions? Brilliant. Right. Thank you very much indeed. We'll pick you up shortly before 11 o'clock. Many thanks.
The scene is set, the briefings are over, and the investiture is about to begin. It is 11 o'clock. On view throughout the castle is a treasure trove of art that establishes the Royal Collection as one of the major collections in the world today. There is a feast of fine paintings by such great artists as Van Dyck, Lawrence, Canaletto and Rubens. There can be few waiting rooms in the world which offer their visitors such a wonderful display of original art as these staterooms give today's recipients and their guests. Honours and awards are not given lightly. They've been justly earned, and the investiture ceremony is the country's acknowledgement of that particular achievement. Many countries in the world today have honours and awards of one sort or another, but nowhere is the bestowing of titles and decorations performed in such splendid surroundings and with such grace, style and ceremony.
Mr. David O'Neill for services to the community in Bridgham, Norfolk.
Investitures are traditional, and I'm always absolutely fascinated by the people who come and all the things that they've done, and they all have different reactions. They all can tell you something different. And if you ask the right questions, or if if you know a little bit about what happens there, it is always different. Some of them are very cleverly discovered. I think that's very important. The system does discover people who do unsung things, that perhaps the local people know about, but nobody else does. And I think that's very satisfactory. One mustn't have a long conversation, obviously, because you'd never finish. The question you ask is what is you hope that you're going to get the answer that you want. Some say that this is for the people I work with. It's a representation rather than for themselves, which is also nice. This is also meant to be a pat on the back. And I think people need pats on the back sometimes. It's a very dingy world otherwise.
Each investiture lasts a little over an hour and brings together not only those whose achievements may not have been brought to our attention by the media, but also those who've not sought publicity but brought to the fore by the investiture ceremony. As today's investiture comes to an end, there can be little doubt that the day will have given lasting pride and pleasure to all.
Marvellous. It was absolutely wonderful. Arriving here in Windsor Castle for the first time, coming inside, lovely experience, and the whole experience was truly memorable.
Fantastic. I mean, aren't we lucky to be in such a wonderful place and be watching so many people who are receiving wonderful awards, having done fantastic things. I think it's wonderful.
She was something very special. I've sort of seen her in ceremonies and so on, but to be right up close to her, it was wonderful. And the words that she would say, I mean, obviously that will remain with me for a very, very long time.
Wonderful. She was so easy and easy to talk to. So, yes, it was a bit nerve-wracking to begin with, but she puts you at your ease.
They make it very special for all the people that are involved in it, and I think that's lovely. So it's a very slick operation, but done with very, very lovely way about it.
It was very special. It's very awe-inspiring, but it's lovely. She's very natural and, yes, very, very brief encounter, but very, very special.